How's it going today, everybody? In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to remove a cylinder head. So this is just going to be removing the cylinder head. We're not going to break the valves down or anything like that. This is a Cummins engine that we use to just show how to remove a cylinder head with. So there is no cam inside, so we're not actually going to have push rods to remove or anything like that. The injectors aren't actually wired up, which, speaking of injectors, that's the first thing you got to do. You're going to loosen that nut up on top of the post of the top of the injector, and then you're going to just remove the wires as I just showed right there. Alright, and now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the rocker arm. So I've got my breakover bar right there with my 10mm socket, and we're just going to go through and break those loose and remove them as I'm showing now. And I'd like to take this time to remind you to wear your PPE as I'm wearing right now. I've got my coveralls on, I've got my slip resistant, oil resistant, steel-toed boots, and I've got my safety glasses on as always. And here we are, yeah, just going through right here and removing all of the rocker arm bolts. And now here shown, I'm just going to be removing the bolts themselves. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take the rocker arms out. And when we're going to take the rocker arms out, we're going to keep them in what's called the married sets. So all the rocker arms that come out together with the tables and the seats, and well, of course, they're the two rocker arms that go per cylinder. They're in a married set, which means they've got the same wear on them. Now, each rocker arm on each cylinder might have different wear than one of the others. So you want to keep them in what's called a married set and just keep them together. And here I'm taking the seats off for the rocker arms right now. And then later on I will show all those being labeled and taken out and set together in a neat, orderly fashion, which I like to always encourage people to do, which I will show right now. So there's all my rocker arms, all my seats, there's all the bolts, all my tables, which are numbered per cylinder, so I always keep them in order. And then there's my exhaust manifold, which I didn't show me removing, but I did it just to lighten up cylinder head because it's a very heavy cylinder head. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the wiring harness, which I did not show in the video, but in my case it's just the bolts on top that are pretty obvious to show. And now what we're going to do is actually going to unloosen the bolts on the cylinder head, which it's all these little 18mm bolts on top of the block. And I'm just going to go through and remove all of those in no specific order, just busting them loose right now with my 1/2-inch drive breakover, which obviously I'm struggling a little bit because they were torqued a little bit above spec from the last guy that did it. So that didn't make my life too easy. Now I've got them all broke loose. Now I'm just using a speed ratchet to just get all these long bolts out of the block right now. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to remove the cylinder head. Now it's always smart to use a buddy system, being that these cylinder heads are so heavy, you don't want to hurt yourself doing it. And always keep in mind to never set the cylinder head down on a flat surface because of these injector tips right there. You do not want to damage these right here. You do not want to bend the tips because then you're going to mess up a lot more things and you're going to have to be swapping injectors out. So you can see right here I've got two 2x4s that I have sitting on with the injectors going right through the center with enough room for them. And there I've got my valve cover, my push rods, my wiring harness, my gasket, and then, as I showed earlier, all my nice, pretty laid out, labeled stuff for the rocker arm assemblies. And now we're going to be putting it back all together. So there we got our gasket, which in your case will probably be a new gasket. This is just a gasket that we always use. Set it on nice and flush. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to use the buddy system again, and we're going to pick up this nice heavy cylinder head and set it down. Now what we're going to have to do is put the bolts right there just to help even it up, and we make sure we don't push the gasket out of the way, and then just tighten those down to make sure that it's all lined up, and then check your gasket to make sure that it's nice and flush and there's no even surfaces. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tighten down the cylinder head in what we call the circular pattern. So you start in the very center of the cylinder head, and you're going to just make a small circle, and then you're slowly just going to expand that circle, pushing all the air of the gasket outwards. So as you can show right here, I'm using my finger to just show that circular pattern and how you're going to go about it. And you're just working in the center and slowly working your way out. And now we're going to be torquing down those bolts. We already did the center ones, and we're working that circle around right now, going towards the outer bolts. As you can see, torquing them to spec, which in our case right here, we're torquing them to 100 foot-pounds with our nice Carlisle torque wrench. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start reassembling our rocker arms. So right now I'm putting the tables on. I've already got the seats down, putting those all back in their numerical order. And now what we're going to be doing is actually setting the rocker arms down and putting them back on their seats. Next thing we're going to do is we're just going to set those bolts back in there, and then we're going to begin to bolt those rocker arms back down as shown right here. Next things next, we're going to put that wiring harness back down, and then we're going to tighten the wiring harness down first, and then what we're going to do is we're going to rewire our injectors as shown. This is a test engine, so I'm not actually going through specifically on how to wire that. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to reinstall my exhaust manifold, which when I say all my other parts, which is the only thing extra thing I took off with this job. And there you have it. That is how to remove a cylinder head. Thank you for watching very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe.